Mr. Mark's Classroom, episode 134. Hey friends, I'm so glad to have you join me today. I have a great guest to introduce to you in just a moment. I want to say that people who are looking for clarity in their children's ministry, trying to get things sorted out so that they can give the very best and actually not waste a ton of time so they can really do what's needed, have really come to the right place today. I have as a special guest, Miss Delanee Williams, and she is one of the specialists at Lifeway. And recently I had her speak to some of our ministers here in Oklahoma about what is it when you're trying to reach out to families that are expecting a child. Some are expecting their first child, some are expecting later in their family, but you know what? The opportunities are great. And I think she's got some terrific ideas to share with us. So I want to welcome Delanee. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. I'm happy to be here.
Very good. So as I was kind of walking through this, I know that you're from a Texas church, pretty large church, where you implemented many of the things you're talking about. So would you say that your background is in kind of early childhood ministry?
Definitely. And that's where I studied in school. But the churches that I've been full-time ministry in have been definitely in preschool ministry. Preschool minister, and then another church where I served on staff in preschool ministry as well.
Awesome. Well, the deal is that a lot of people are, whenever you're ministering to young families, and then you step back and say, hey, wait a second, here's a chance to begin the relationship with the family as you're waiting for the child to be born. I think many of us are missing a great opportunity there. It doesn't start after the baby's born. It can start before. Why don't you walk us through some of those great ideas that you shared with us earlier?
Yeah, definitely. Let me see. And, just as you were saying, too, how we're missing those opportunities to connect with those families, that's what we were finding. That as I visited with other preschool ministers, that some of our parents were waiting longer and longer to bring their children to the preschool classes on Sunday morning. So
Yes,
not only,
I've seen it.
right.
I've seen it in our worship services. There's tiny babies out there, and anyway, they're holding back.
Yeah, and so as we were visiting and we were networking with others, we said there has to be some way that we can intentionally connect with these families and build relationships with them prior to the baby being born, so we can build that trust with them, and they're more likely to bring their babies at a younger age. So we're able to minister to the preschoolers when they're babies, but also the parents are able to be connected to their class earlier on. They're able to trust knowing that their baby's needs are being met.
And that's the key word right there, Delanee, is the word trust. If they haven't ever been in the preschool area, if they've never seen the bed baby class, that it's safe, that there is a mother's room to care for her baby there, that they haven't seen the workers, the teachers who are so delighted to meet them. If none of that's ever happened, then we really do have to take the first steps and be intentional about trying to reach them, or they may not actually make that happen.
Right, definitely. So, yeah.
Okay, why don't you walk through? I think you've got some slides prepared, and I let you do that fancy switch the screen thing.
See if I can get that.
Let's see if you can do that. All right, here it comes.
There we go. Okay, so just as you had said, this ministry is very much about connecting with others. You want to be able to connect with the parents. First of all, build those relationships with the parents. But hey, no, it happens, right? But you also, most importantly, you want to help connect them to God, meaning encouraging them in their spiritual life, but also as the spiritual leaders in their home. And then it's connecting them to the church, and then also connecting them with other couples, other young families as well.
Absolutely.
So I do want to introduce you first to a family, the Williams family. And they are very much like many of the families, I'm sure, at your church, where whenever I first met them, their daughter is a toddler, and they came to worship probably once or twice a month. And so especially during the toddler years, there's that separation anxiety. So we would see the little girl, Shelby, she would come, and but those first few minutes, it was really hard for her to adjust. And so it was hard for the parents to see that as well. And that by the end of the time, Shelby was so excited and didn't want to leave. And so, this is just one example of many, many families in our churches that's their situation. And so that was one of the stories that led us to, we have to do something to build connections with these families before they're toddlers, so that we can work with the parents to say, okay, how can we help build that trust? How can we help you as you're parenting and all? And so, like I said, that's the Williams family. And so their story helped us sort of create this new ministry. And it's not a new concept. I remember even, many years ago hearing different churches do the cradle roll ministry.
Cradle roll, that's what we always had too.
That was like, even when I was little, my grandmother, years, even before I was born, served in the cradle roll ministry at her church. And so it's not a new concept, but it's just maybe a new face with the concept, or we tailored it to meet our needs at our church. And that's one of the things, as I go through and I share these ideas, it may be that your church takes the concept ministry and creates, how's this going to best fit the needs in our community? Because our churches aren't all exactly the same, and we have to make sure that we adapt to help reach those families and connect them.
I agree. Good word. That's a good word.
So then first part is getting started. First of all, you need to pray about it and say, okay, Lord, seek his wisdom and show us the steps that we need to take. We're giving this to you, Lord. Help us know, how can we reach these families? Because it's not just a check off people for attendance, getting more people there. It's you're wanting to build those relationships with them, so their lives are going to ultimately be changed because they've grown closer to Christ.
That's the purpose. That's why this is so important.
Exactly. And so getting started, one of the first things you want to do, there it goes, is you need to communicate the need for the ministry. First of all, to the pastor and to the other leadership. You have to have buy-in from other people, or either it's going to be you doing it all. And what you need to do is share the why. Not just that this is how we're going to do it, but why this is important. Just as we talked about, some of our families aren't getting connected. We're wanting to connect people to the church, build those relationships. It's also an outreach tool into the community. And so it's not just people that come to our church, and so then we're going to minister to those just in our church. It's maybe people that have friends that are expecting, that don't attend a church somewhere else. So it's that mind of outreach as well. And so,
and I know that when people are excited about their church and they talk about it passionately with friends, that those friends are drawn to that more than anything.
Exactly.
So if you've got people in place that when they say, hey, we invited our friend and they're going to be having a baby, like, man, you're ready to go. You've got an opportunity to reach out.
Definitely. And a lot of times what we would do is not only in the beginning would we share that vision, but we would find other ways throughout the year to tell stories about how the Lord is working in that ministry. But using even stats of, this is how many babies were born into our ministry this last year. It just helped to convey that need.
So you use the opportunities to speak it from the podium or write it in the church newsletter.
Definitely. Right.
Okay. I think that's good. We probably should calendar moments throughout the year, because we'll completely forget that when it's time to just enlist workers. We can't think of anything else.
Right. And then finding creative ways, not just during baby dedication and
Okay.
parent commitment times. Those are great times because it's already highlighted.
Right.
But even during staff meeting, sharing that so the other staff can hear as well, just, what's going on. So they can see it's not just a budget item or something like that, that there's real people attached to it.
I'll tell you someone who really needs to hear, because you're not talking about a long labored speech. You're talking about giving a report, a quick announcement. And that is the deacons. They have a monthly meeting at our church, and to walk in and say, hey, we wanted you to know we reached this many and had this happen all through our Expecting Parents ministry. And they're going to go, what? Wow. We have that, and just thank them and leave. But you know what? They're some of the best supporters when they know what's going on, and they usually don't know in children's ministry.
That's a great idea. Definitely. Yes. So, and once you share or you continue sharing that vision, you also, one of the first things you need to do is name the ministry. And it doesn't have to be this incredible, great name, but it just needs an identity too. So it's not always the new and expected special delivery. I know other people, it's been Blessed Expectations, Cradle Call, just anything, just a neat name that has that.
I like the name Special Delivery. That's great.
Well, and the reason partly we did that too is this ministry not only ministered to parents and families that had children by birth, but also through adoption. And so we felt that included both situations and all. So that was one thing that we wanted to minister not only to families who experienced having babies by birth, but also through adoption. So
that's right. Very good. We've adopted a child, and he's not a baby, but that means a lot to families that you remember that. Very good.
Right. And we had some that, maybe they were older preschoolers. And so it looked a little different the way we ministered to that family, but we wanted to include them and know that we were praying for them and building that connection with that family, just because they were experiencing some of the same joy, some of the same excitement, some of the same similar challenges as well. So,
fantastic.
So you want to get started. So you want to share your vision and then also name the ministry. And then the next part is enlist a coordinator and ministry team. So with the coordinator,
good. Get some help.
Right. So it's not all your ministry. And so when it first was created, we had an incredible, all of our coordinators are great, but the one in the very beginning was wonderful at getting all the details organized. We worked hand in hand. She also had that vision of, we could do this is another way we can minister, but she did the day-to-day details of checking with the different encouragers, keeping the adult Sunday school classes, talking with them if they knew anyone expecting, really it helped me to be able to do other ministry, involved in other ministry opportunities. And she was able to coordinate our special delivery ministry.
Exactly, because as a preschool minister, your plate is full. You can't just do this special delivery ministry. And I have a question. So you have a coordinator, and then the rest of the team members are called encouragers.
Right.
Okay.
And that was actually something from the church where I previously served. There was one, and it was like a cradle roll type thing. And we had encouragers, and the way that the encouragers were assigned were by the where you lived in the city or in the town. And so the thought behind that was that encourager would be more likely to be able to build a relationship and continue a relationship with that family as well. But I know, like, whenever the church where we started this, we just felt as we prayed and the Lord led us, or led our coordinator to pairing up the encouragers with the moms, it was always a cool God story of just, there was some connection. Maybe they were from Oklahoma. I mean, we had that sometimes and
Something in common.
Right. So they were already able to establish a quick connection. So, and something too that I loved about the encouragers is many of our preschool families may not have extended family in the area.
I think your office is on fire.
It's right outside. I know. It's going right down the street. Yeah. So,
sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, sorry, and pray for the people in that, with
Who knows? Yeah.
So, but with that it were people that were in our church that maybe couldn't volunteer every Sunday in the preschool ministry. They were able to volunteer as encouragers. And so that was already another way to have more people involved in our ministry as well. And then those families that didn't have extended family close by that were expecting a baby, then it was almost another set of grandparents for them, or something like that in some cases. And so that was really a neat opportunity that we had. So our encouragers, we always invited them. We loved for them to be able to volunteer sometime in our preschool ministry, just because they were the ones that really built that one-on-one relationship. And so the moms and dads are going to ask more questions to them. Maybe they may feel more comfortable, or just as they're visiting, so how do you clean all the toys? How do they disinfect everything, in preschool? And so,
and I wonder, because that's such a good idea about encouragers, even if they weren't in the classroom, because I have some friends that would be so great at this, but maybe they're physically not able to be in the classroom, but even to use them as greeters, because they're the kind of person, who would go out and build those relationships. Well, that's obviously the people who would be so great at welcoming families as they're entering into our space. And I was just thinking, and then they could see the children and the families as they're growing,
right?
Because that would be so great.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like you said, there were some of our encouragers that physically weren't able to volunteer. And so we just, whenever we would have meetings for our encouragers, we would almost have like a time of training for them of, here, what are some questions you're hearing? And that was something that our coordinator also planned out, like what our training meetings would be. And so we would walk them through that. We would give them a tour of our preschool area, and they always knew that they could, contact us if there was a question they didn't know, or something
right,
like that as well.
Well, that makes sense, because they need training, and whenever they go out and make that visit, make those connections, they need to be able to explain, this is how and why we do it this way. And if they were given a question, they would be more able to answer it.
Right. And, and something else, I think another area of training that's important is just, sharing their testimony and witnessing, because you're going to have some parents that aren't connected to the church. And that's what you're ultimately wanting, those that aren't connected. Mm-hmm. You want to build that relationship, share Christ with them.
Yeah, to see them come to Christ would be the best thing ever. So yes, I agree. Good.
Right. So your encourager, so you have your encourager team and your coordinator. Then the next part is you want to develop the ministry plan. So how are you going to find prospective couples? How are you going to know? There's always that. And I'm sure everyone's had this situation where everyone else has known someone's expecting, but, you feel like it's the last one, when you're wanting to connect with those families and all. And so that's where our coordinator worked closely with our adult teachers to find out some of our church members, but then also, again, how we were talking about sharing that vision with the church, finding creative ways, a process or a pathway or something where church members can share names of neighbors or something like that. And, we ended up having some grandparents that whose kids were not in church. And they had been praying for them, but they were local, but they weren't in church, and they wanted them to be in church. And they said, would you contact my children? They're expecting. And so, that was that was another avenue that we were like, okay, yes, we need to build those connections with them. So finding that way where they can let us know and learn of those names and couples. And so then the next thing is the first contact, the initial contact is by the coordinator. And what the coordinator, she just calls, just visits with them, finds out more information, maybe where they're from, with a due date, if it's a hospital or a birthing center, all of that. And then also she asks, are there any prayer requests? How can we be praying for you at this time? And explains more what the special delivery ministry was about. And so then she had a little sheet, sort of a little log with all those questions. And then she would keep a copy, but then also send a copy to the encourager that she.
And to you?
And yes, I had one too. So that was great. And like I said, we would meet periodically just, for us to pray about what was going on, but also just especially if there was a ministry opportunity, she would want to make sure to, share that as well. Good. And so then after that initial contact is the encourager contacts. And what we asked our encouragers to do was at least once a month, connect with them. And so some would visit, some would call, and some would text maybe once a week or something like that. But just letting them know, we're praying for you. What can I do for you? And, some, yeah, I'm here and we're caring for you. And so we would ask during that first time the encourager visited to go by the house, and we had a little prayer journal. And so we gave the prayer journal. She would take the prayer journal and then the little Baby Life magazine.
Oh, man.
And so that's
wonderful.
And what I love about this magazine is it has milestones for different ages in there. And it's specifically just for those first couple of years of life. Mm-hmm. And pertains to that. And it has articles for moms, but it also has articles for dads as well.
And what I really like is also the quality of the writers, the expertise. Yeah. They're so qualified with what they're talking about. If it might be a doctor or something else, it's very good.
Right. And we had wonderful feedback too from our parents, just saying, I didn't even know something like this existed from a Christian point of view too. And so,
how often is this? The special edition, it changes yearly, over a couple of years.
Right. And so it was updated a few months ago. So this is the newest one.
Okay. And they always put a cutie pie right on the front.
Definitely.
So I have to tell you, whenever we were doing a cradle roll ministry, we would find out about a baby that was expected. And so I really just said to my bed babies class, I said, okay, here's some babies on the way. And I want to give you, I gave them my church credit card and said, I want you to go to Walmart and I want you to buy a container, a useful container, fill it with things that would be useful or even at the hospital. And I gave them the how much I had budgeted to be able to do that so that they could. And I gave them the Baby Life magazine, a letter from me that they could put in each one, and also a prayer guide for their expected baby. So every week of gestation, you knew what the development was and could be praying for your unborn baby. And so they were so excited. They went out, they would go buy those things, they would wrap them up fancy, and they put so much into it and delivered them and said, we're going to be your baby's Sunday school teacher, and we're looking forward to getting to meet them. So in the meantime, I'm praying for you. And these ladies, they hit it out of the park. They were so great. But the Baby Life magazine was a great part of that. And it was so affordable. It really is a ministry piece everyone should use.
Right. Definitely. That's a great idea. And I'm sure it was nice too that you encouraged and equipped your teachers to do ministry. And so it
Yeah.
helped build that connection with the families as well.
It was. It was. So we can get this magazine at lifeway.com, I guess.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also on, if they're ordering their curriculum,
Oh, mm-hmm.
it's on that order form.
Literature order form. Yeah.
Right. And there's the Home Life and Parent Life magazines as well. And we would sometimes include the Parent Lives, during that initial visit, but a lot of times we did that after the baby was born.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, great. That's a great idea.
So then this all, like I was talking about, the encourager continues that connection throughout the pregnancy or the adoption process. And then the baby arrives or the child arrives and all that. And so I would sometimes go with the encourager, or it may just, depending on schedules and all, we may go different times, but we would make a hospital or a home visit. We always called beforehand, just because it's just best to call beforehand to make sure.
Let me just say, for those of us who are men, yes, call ahead of time.
Right.
It could be an embarrassing moment, and it's not worth it.
Right. And what I also found too was there were sometimes maybe, just different sickness or something, and I couldn't visit that day. And so I would call and I would make that connection with the family and let them know why I wasn't visiting. And every time the parents would say, thank you for not coming when you're sick. And so I think if we go when it's maybe not the best time for them or for us, that ends up tearing down trust rather than building up trust.
And one of the things that I have found that parents appreciate is, if I am going to make the visit, I am going to get to see them, and they offer to let me hold the baby, which that's so great.
Right.
I always say, hey, I've shaken a lot of hands. Do you mind if I wash my hands before I hold her? And they'll go, yes.
Yes.
Wash. But you know what? They do appreciate that, that you are careful like that.
And I think too, exactly how you were saying, when you wash your hands right before you hold the baby, in their mind, they're also noticing that to say, if he or she cares about that now, then that probably transfers into the ministry at church. And so that's, I had parents many times tell me, hey, that earned points with us, something, small we think is so small, but to parents, it's a big deal.
It is. It really is.
So once, you go and you visit, and many times it may be, you may not even find out the baby was born until they're home, because,
true,
in 24 hours sometimes. And so I would just set up a time to go visit at the house. And usually what we would do is we would do a bag, similar to how you were saying the ladies took over there. Sometimes what we even did is we put some of our CDs from Sunday morning that came with our curriculum. Maybe it may have been the past quarter or something like that. We would put that in the bag as well. And it was an opportunity for us to say, this is something that we use on Sunday mornings, and we thought you might enjoy it as well. And so something like that, we would put in probably a book for our for the parents, and then maybe a little baby care item. I know sometimes, there's the little diaper bag tags, the church's name, we would put that in there. We had also
do you know a good source for buying those?
We had used the NLS Specialties.
NLS, that was the one I was trying to think. It was some letters.
Right. And some people use, they get little onesies printed up, or, they have a lot of different things that you can get. But too, in fact, from them, we ended up getting a calendar. It was a baby's first year calendar, and it was undated. So parents could write in the date, but then it had little stickers at the bottom of it, where whenever the baby started crawling, they could take the sticker and then put it on that date, quickly. And so things like that.
That's good.
We also, something I think is very important, and many times it gets overlooked after you've done the gifts for the parents or a book for them, and and then also the baby are the siblings. You know, especially those preschool age siblings, their life has just now changed and they have no idea what to expect. And that was something that my parents, even from an early age, really shared, or, you know, I observed from them. Anytime we had a friend or a family member, a baby was born, we made sure to take a gift for the sibling. And many times it may be bubbles that we take. I'm not talking anything expensive. Right. It was just something for them to open.
Smart. And you can go to the dollar store and pick up several puzzles and actually sit down and do the puzzle with the child, so that there's even a little moment where there could be interaction and not just be about the baby. Right. When you have something to do with them, it sure is fun. It helps.
Right. And they appreciate too, and it helps emphasize more that they're a big brother or they're a big sister. Mm-hmm. Many times what I would do too is we had little postcards that were printed at our church. We just, you know, when ladies created them and we sent them out, but it said, you're a big sister, you're a big brother. And I would even write those even before the baby was born, just to say, you know, I'm so excited for you, you know, or just something to where they could get mail too, but it was focusing more on them rather than the baby. And, you know, and that was just one other step to help that process for the family, that, yes. You know, as they're adjusting to their additional family member or members in some cases as well.
That's true. And, you know, parents, they recognize when you love all of their children. And Definitely. That's a big deal.
Definitely. And so that's something we would do whenever the baby first arrived. And then the next thing we did is we had yard signs printed. And this is, I think, something like fast signs, or, you know, one of those places that can do them fairly quickly. And of course, we always have permission prior to putting the sign in the yard. Some parents, I would say maybe 30%, 25 to 30% said, no, we'd rather not have a sign. And then sometimes that was because their HOA wouldn't allow it. And so, so we definitely wanted to ask to make sure, but families loved having the sign in the yard. And so we had blue ones printed for boys and pink ones for the girls. And actually we had an encourager. That's what her responsibility was. She took the signs, put them in the yard, and then she went and picked them back up, you know, and so that was great. And we knew Michelle was always going to have them there and bring them back as well. And so, and it was neat I had families in the church that would come up to me and say, hey, who just had a baby from the church that lives, you know, on this street? That's my neighborhood. I didn't know that they were able to connect with other families with the sign in their yard.
A neighbor down the street, we go to the same church.
Right. And
I love that.
So that was something that was neat. And on the sign, we purposely had congratulations on your new arrival. So again, it could go for those adopting or those who had baby bumper. So
exactly.
So that was something that was a great addition that we had as well. And then we also had other aspects of our ministry. I've talked a little bit about the adoptive families. And so we would have some of our encouragers maybe had been parents that had experienced the adoption process. So they were able to walk through that process with those families because they had been through it as well. And so that was, you know, and it looked different the way we minister to them than the others. Then there's always, there may be some children that are born with special needs. This is a little girl named Shay who was born with a cleft palate, and her family, they didn't know about her needs, that she was going to be born with a cleft palate and all the surgeries that she would need to have until after she was born. And so walking through the family with that, it was a different experience for us all and wanted to meet their needs. And then, two, unfortunately, there's the grief side of this ministry. And so we had encouragers that would minister to those families that experience miscarriages or stillborns, and all because as much as we minister to the other families, we need to minister to them as well. And many times it was listening to hear, you may not hear of those situations as often, because people may not share them as much. So whenever you do hear them, or you have different people listening to hear, that's where we would many times rely on our adult teachers, our teachers of the adult classes, to share with us. And in some of the situations, we kept it confidential because that's couples wanted, but we wanted to minister to them as well.
Good.
With that. And then, talk about our new parents after they, a few weeks after the child's born, baby's born, our encouragers would just check in with them again. We want to continue that relationship, ask them how they're doing. A lot of our moms, they're experiencing all the, their life has changed for good, but at the same time, I know
the change.
Right. And some of the parents would go through postpartum depression and all. And so this was an opportunity that we were able to minister to them as well. And something else we would do, and it would help encourage, just checking in with them would help encourage the families to bring their babies earlier to the baby room and on. So something that we did is on the baby's first Sunday, we shared a little keepsake with them. And it was a little fold over type thing that we created. And this idea came from something that my parents had done for me. They took my picture with on my first Sunday at my church when I was a baby, took a picture of the teacher holding me on that Sunday morning. And that is one of my most treasured possessions, just because, it communicates so much to me, but especially in the ministry that I feel the Lord's called me to. And so we wanted to create something special for our families, but then also we wanted to communicate that we were teaching even in the baby room. And so that's why on the little fold over keepsake, it even has a place where you can fill in what the Bible story was for that day. And so, and then we would take their picture and then had one of those little printers, the wireless printers, and then just be able to stick in the memory card. And so it was great. And in fact, I saw on social media a few weeks ago, one of the moms had found it going through things and she shared it again. She was like, I love this idea. So it was something that was important. And we did that all in-house as well, just printing that. So
just had to get the right things in place.
Right. And then the next part of any ministry opportunity is the preparing the budget. And so you need to think about, having events throughout the year. And I'm not talking big events and all, but you still need to plan for them. Then gifts, just even those simple little gifts for the siblings, the yard signs. If you're going to do an outreach event, and then the Baby Life and Parent Life magazines as well. And then also, after you've done preparing the budget, you want to prepare a calendar. So like I talked about the events, we would generally have some on campus and off campus. We had some where we invited both. Of course we're going to invite the parents, but invited the moms and the dads, and some it was just the moms. I know some churches bring in guest speakers, use that opportunity and have a dinner. And then, so just whatever works best for your church. We would have some that were on campus and off campus. In fact, we had one time we had a brunch at our coordinator's home. And so the lady shared, it felt more relational. It was easier to, connect with people because we were in someone's home. And there was a church member that saw the announcement in the bulletin and shared it with her next door neighbor. The next door neighbor hadn't been to church, didn't know anyone. And she said, can I still come? And we're like, yes, bring her here. And so she came. That mom ended up coming to church the next Sunday. And the next Sunday, a few months later, became a Christian and was baptized.
Oh, wow.
And it was because that church member cared enough on a Saturday morning to get over and share a bulletin announcement with her next door neighbor.
And I think sometimes that we haven't really looked at the opportunity of having an event, but we already know that the generation that's having these children and stuff really admire and want to draw close to someone who's just a little ahead of them, who
Definitely.
has been there. They want to listen, they want to hear, they're taking in good information, and they're taking in a lot of information, really.
Right.
So I think so the first thing that comes to my mind is like, well, what are we gonna have a meeting about? I mean, that's gonna be like crazy. I don't know what to make a meeting about. And the truth is, maybe one of those books that says you're gonna have a baby, and or welcome your new baby, just open it up to the contents and look at all the different subjects, the contents that the writer addresses. You probably have a whole bunch of topics there, and the book itself could be the information that you could share in a meeting like that, or invite someone to share. So we may be overthinking something that could be fairly simple, and a matter of getting it on a calendar and getting it going.
Right. And you're exactly right. And I think a lot of the times it was just fellowship. They just wanted to fellowship with other people. And build those connections. We would always invite our encouragers, of course, but we would invite our baby teachers as well, because they were able to get to know the people who would be teaching and caring for their babies outside of Sunday morning, and they could hear their story too and their testimony.
And that trust is so important. And once that trust is established, it makes everything so much better. So yeah, baby teachers, did you hear that? You're very important to go and start building that trust.
Most definitely. And sometimes we would have a time where we would share the levels of biblical learning, that information, just to help our parents know what we were doing during those baby years was so important, and that a foundation was being laid. So whenever they came to church, we weren't just babysitting. That, yes, you'll see the Bible out in the classroom, and a baby is, tapping it or touching it and all that, but they're hearing the teacher say Bible and telling them that God loves them. So that really helped lights come on for some of our parents to say, okay, y'all have a curriculum for babies? What?
Yes.
That's very, very important. And so it helped them to be able to learn maybe what all goes on in the preschool ministry without saying, here's a training, A, B, C, D. It was more of a conversation.
Right.
And sometimes it would come up with, how do we clean our toys? What would happen if there was an emergency? Those questions just came up sometimes. And so we were able to share that and communicate that to the parents.
And sometimes when those questions come up and we realize, oh, we got to fix this or make this right or better, it's not to needle you. It's to say, hey, look, someone brought this to our attention and we know how to fix this. Let's just go ahead and plan and get it all fixed.
Right.
So use that.
And sometimes I think in ministry, we think we have communicated something multiple times, and maybe we have, but it needs to be communicated more, because maybe it hasn't come to that group. And so finding different ways to communicate that. It's like you said, so there's going to be sometimes maybe where you have a question and all of that, and it's to help improve the ministry. And so I think very much an important part of the events is also listening to those parents and their questions and their concerns as well.
Absolutely. Well, our time's getting kind of close here. I'm hoping there's a big story right here about this little family.
Yes, and so I told you about the Williams family, and a few years later, they were expecting their second child, and I still remember getting the call that day that their baby Shay had been born, and that
that's the baby with the cleft palate.
The palate. And I remember going and visiting with them and praying with them and just hearing all the challenges that they would be experiencing, and just that feeling of being overwhelmed. And I remember listening to some of those concerns, listening to those questions, and working with them, communicating how we were going to make sure that Shay's needs were met, that they could trust us, working with them. And so it was during that time that they were expecting Shay that they became a part of our special delivery ministry. And then so they became more involved in the church. A few months later, after Shay was born, the mom, Tara, shared with me, I would love to be a part of special delivery ministry because it ministered so much to me. And so this family was able to get connected through it, but not only them, but their parents were in the area as well. And so their parents came and were involved in church. And this picture is from last year. And so you see Tara's expecting their third. And here is one on Shiler's just a few months ago. And so you think about a family slide that was changed. And it all started with an intentional connection to build a relationship with them and get them involved in church.
That's so fantastic. That's so fantastic. Oh, wow. I think I'll let you change the screen back here, but I just want to say, I think many of us are not taking this incredible opportunity of reaching out before their children are born so that we can build those relationships and get the ball rolling and trying to make a difference and minister. So thank you for the challenge today. And even more than that, Delanee, thank you for the practical steps that you took and how it was so successful, because we could take many of those things and put them into practice right now. So I want to challenge everybody. If this is something that God leads you toward, I want to challenge you to pray about who is it that should be a part of that team, and then maybe who the coordinator should be. Because even as you're figuring out the answers of what will be next, you can do that together as a team. And actually, it would probably be better than just what you would come up with. So I encourage you to do that. So I love hearing how successful this was. And I'm sure that it still is for all of them, even though you're not there. I bet it's still going very, very well. Thank you, Delanee, for all of the great information.
Appreciate it.
Hey, I do want to ask you real quick, because you're at Lifeway, and I know you have a great conference every year because I go to it, and I love, 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 love all of it. Tell us about the ETCH conference.
The ETCH conference. Yes, it stands for Equipping the Church and Home. And this will be our second year having it, and it's great. I mean, all of the general sessions are wonderful too. It helps you as a leader. It's for those who are leaders from preschool all the way up to high school, and how we can partner together in ministry to these families. But also we have lots and lots of breakouts. And the great part of that too, and Mr. Mark, I think you're leading some.
I am. I've got a couple, and I'm very excited about sharing those this year.
And what I love about the breakouts too is they many of them are age specific or specific to a certain part of ministry, with very practical ideas. And so it's great. We heard great comments, and I have a lot of friends that said counting down the days till to ETCH this year. And so if people haven't registered, I would love for them to come. You can go to etchconference.com and learn more about that. There's even more information on our blog, the kidsministry101.com as well.
Absolutely. Great resource. Matter of fact, everybody go check it out. It's in October. It's in Nashville. And that's a fine little place to also visit.
Definitely.
To get in. Yeah, great place. And so we'd love for you to come and be a part of that as well. Delanee, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, everybody. That pretty much wraps it up for this episode of Mr. Mark's Classroom. I hope that you will take some of these ideas and use them. For those of you who have not downloaded the podcast app in the App Store, I hope you'll do that today. It's free, and you can subscribe to Mr. Mark's Classroom and be notified once a week when we post our new interview or our new teaching time that I'll have with you. Listen, we want you to have clarity in ministry. We want you to be hugely successful because we know that we are reaching kids together. Your life in children's ministry is a gift. So go and make it count.